أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. Continuing with our discussion, Unity in Diversity in Islamic History, where we said we will be discussing the collaboration between Shias and Sunnis within history. We said before we get into the actual discussion, we need to go through some introductory discussions. We have already had 3 introductory discussions. We were discussing the 4th introductory discussion, and that was the diversity and the conflicts within Shiism and Sunnism. So we already discussed the Sunnism part of it. Today and the next lecture, inshallah, we will be discussing the conflicts and the diversity within Shiism. And we'll be focusing mainly, we'll be giving one example from Zaydism, but we'll be mainly focusing on Shia Imamiyya, Shia Ithna Ashariya, because that's the majority of the Shias out there, and that's where we, at least I, belong to. Now, as I mentioned, that this is a sensitive topic, and I'm aware this is a sensitive topic, but we need to discuss these issues for the reasons we previously mentioned. And if I can add 1 or 2 more reasons, one of the reasons I believe we as Muslims, it's time now we own and know our own history. Okay, we should know our own history and also own it. There were good things which happened in history, and there were things which were mistakes which happened in history. What we need to do is we learn from the mistakes and then make sure that we don't make those mistakes again. That is number 1. And number 2, which we have been stressing on a lot, is the whole issue of diversity. And that's the whole topic we have been discussing throughout our series. That there is diversity within all strands and all sects and denominations in Islam. Rather, I don't know if I can say this much, that all religions also within them have strands, and within them also there are strands, okay? They are divided and have strands within all the denominations. So every sect in Islam has strands within them, and thus Shia Ithna Ashariya and Shiism in general also is not an exception from that rule. Now, before we get into the discussing the slides, one thing I would like to mention is this, that whenever we are discussing diversity, there are 2 ways of discussing diversity. One way of discussing diversity is where we are discussing it through mentioning the conflicts and the disputes that sect had within it. So this is what we have been discussing all through within Sunnism, and today also we will be discussing the same. But there's another way of discussing diversity, which can be a whole topic by itself. I'll just touch on it today, but which can be a topic and a series by itself. And that is by looking at the differences of opinion within the scholars of that sect on different topics. Okay, so when you look at different topics, you look at a topic and then you look at the different opinions within the scholars in that sect. And that's how you come and understand the diversity. Okay, so let me share the slides and then we start. So I'll be very briefly alluding to this point of diversity via differences of opinion. That's not my topic, as I mentioned, but I'll be alluding to it so that we understand diversity is huge. It's not like the way some claim that Shiism is monolith. No, Shiism is very diverse also. So this is our topic we have been discussing. So, to discuss diversity, I like quoting this example from Sheikh Tusi. Both of these examples are from Sheikh Tusi. One is from his Usul book, Al-Udda, and the second one is from his Rijal book, if you can call it a Rijal book, his Fihrist. But look at his statement, it's beautiful. He says, فَإِن تَجَاسَرَ مُتَجَاسَرٌ. Okay? If someone dares to say this much, what does he say? كل مسألة مما اختلفوا فيه عليه دليل قاطع. So every disputed issue within the scholars of Islam has a definite proof. It has دليل قاطع. And whoever opposes it is mistaken and sinful, is fasiq and mukhti'. Okay, he's deviant and misguided also. Okay, these are the terminologies we see being used. What does Sheikh Tusi want to say? He says that look at the differences of opinion within scholars. And then if anybody tells you that within these differences of opinion, one person comes and says, no, these differences are there for the sake of differences. There is dalilun qati', there is definitive proof for all these differences. And these people who are having, these scholars who are having differences are just doing it for the sake of creating differences, or some go even to say that they are doing it for the sake of disuniting the ummah. Okay? Sheikh Tusi says that if this is your claim, then يلزمه أن يفسق الطائفة بأجمعها. A beautiful statement for those who want to understand the diversity within Islam, especially within Shiism. He says that if you claim that there's no difference of opinion within the scholars, and whoever differs is a fasiq and deviant and misguided, then you will be forced to consider all the scholars in within. Rather, the whole sect will be considered as sinful and misguided. Why? Because there's difference everywhere. Then he says, وَيُضْلِلْ شُيُوخَ الْمُتَقَدِّمِينَ كُلَّهُم. You will have to consider all the mashayikh, all the scholars. This is Sheikh Tusi speaking in the 4th and 5th century. Is very close to ghaiba, okay? The major occultation, he is very close to it. Now he's close to the time of the Imams. He is saying that you will have to consider all the scholars before me as misguided if you claim that there's no difference of opinion and there's no diversity. Okay? Why? He says, because it's impossible for anyone to claim agreement with another in all rulings of Islamic law. He's discussing fiqh and jurisprudence at the moment. You will not find agreement between scholars in every law. There's difference of opinion. Now, this is an interesting statement. He says, what if a person lives in this bubble, the way I call it, in the bubble, that there's no diversity, there's no difference of opinion. He says, whoever reaches, وَمَنْ بَلَغَ إِلَى هَذَا الْحَدِّ لَا يُحْسِنْ مُكَالِمَتَهُ. He says, anybody who reaches this kind of understanding, and we personally have reached also this kind of conclusion that whenever somebody lives in this bubble that there's no diversity at all, it's better not talk to him. Okay, this is what Sheikh Tusi says. It's better, this guy is not worthy of discussion. It's better to stay silent with them. And wallahi, you will see sometimes there's no need to discuss with these issues because they don't understand the matters. But this was a fiqhi statement. He then gives a theological statement because the claim is that yes, we have fiqhi differences, but we don't have theological differences. So in his Fihrist, he then discusses a theological example. He says Muhammad bin Khalil, who was known as Sakkak, who was a student of Hisham bin Hakam, the famous companion of the Imams. Okay, we all know him. He says, وَكَانَ مُتَكَلِّمًا مِنْ أَصْحَابِ هِشَام. Okay? He was the He was a student and a disciple of Hisham bin Hakam, and he was a theologian himself. Now look at this statement. وخالفه في أشياء إلا في أصل الإمامة. This student who at the time of the Imam, this is happening at the time of the Imam. As we mentioned that we will be discussing these differences and disputes from the time of the Imam. So we're discussing it chronologically, yeah? This is a theologian at the time of the Imam. Both of these are companions of the Imams, but notice the student differs from the teacher Hisham bin Hakam in every issue except the main principle of Imam. You get me? So it's only Imama which they agree upon, and everything else they disagree with each other. Now you can add the dots and how many things they differ with each other. Okay, this is one example of showing diversity. A second example I would like to show is the amount of books being written at the moment on this topic. So anybody who comes and claims that there's no diversity in within Shia Imamiyya, in within Shia Ithna Ashariya, is either unaware or either is pretending to be unaware. The amount of literature coming out, I'm just giving a snapshot. Otherwise, we can quote multiple books on this topic. Look at the topics, okay? From the schools of thought being formed in within theology only. So, for example, this is a book written تطورات الكلامية إمامية در مدرسة بغداد. The evolution of Imamiyya theology in within the madrasa of Baghdad only. That means there was a school of Baghdad. This is where the likes of Sheikh Mufid and Said Murtada and Sheikh Tusi belong to. There's evolution going on in within their school also. So the other book also written on the same topic, Justarhai Dar Madrasa Kalamiya Baghdad, studies done on the theological school of Baghdad. This is only looking at the Baghdad school and the studies being done, what is happening in within the school. Justarhai Dar Madrasa Kalamiya Qom. Okay, studies done in the theological school of Qom. This is where the likes of Sheikh Saduq and his teacher Ibn Walid belong to. Okay, and you see the amount of differences between Baghdad and Qom, which we will allude to some, we will discuss some of them as we go further. But the differences were huge. Okay, we'll come and quote Qutbuddin Rawandi as we go further. Then studies on the Madrasa Theological School of Kufa. This is where the companions of the fifth and sixth Imam were. And what were the differences and what were the methodologies, all are being discussed by these scholars. جستارهای در مدرسه کلامی حله. Okay, studies being done in the school of Hilla. Okay, this is where the likes of Allama Hilli come in and Khaji Nasiruddin Tusi come in, Sayyid ibn Tawus come in. And this is the time when philosophy merges with theology, and you will see the amount of opposition this school faces from later scholars. Now, this was only theology. There's also Makatib Hadith. So this is a book written Maktabai Hadithi. Okay, this is a famous scholar in Mashhad, Muhammad Hassan Rabbani, who is very well versed with the books and the different thoughts which are there within Shiism. So he writes these different schools of hadith within Shiism and the different methodologies they adopt and the different places they lived in. And if you are following up, you will see the amount of disputes which the Shia scholars have. For example, on the issue of Akhbar Ahad, the solitary reports. Okay, these are all being discussed by these schools. It doesn't stop there. Makatib fiqhi, that's another book now. The different schools of fiqh. Okay, and again, their methodologies, their conclusions, how do their conclusions differ? One of those examples is this book. Look at this book. Wallahi, the name is also, you see, when you study, for those of you who have read a bit of Man La Yahduru al-Faqih of Sheikh Saduq, and he's not alone in this. There are other scholars like Mullah Faiz Kashani also. You will come and see Muqaddas al-Dabili also. They are known in within Shia fiqh to be giving fatwas which are not common. So the way we say they're not common, are they not common because we consider them uncommon, or they were uncommon even at that time? This is a research which needs to be done, okay? But one of those examples is Sheikh Saduq. Sheikh Saduq in his Man La Yahduru al-Faqih has opinions which are very different, and the way the author calls it, التنبيه على غرائب من لا يحضر الفقيه. Notice the title. التنبيه means he's alerting. Okay, you shouldn't be alert. He's warning you from the uncommon fatawas of Sheikh Saduq in his Man لا يحضره الفقيه. Now, Man لا يحضره الفقيه is one of our four canonical books. And Sheikh Saduq gives very different opinions in this book, different from what the other Shia scholars believe in. Okay, these were different schools of thoughts within Shiism. So this by itself is a topic which, inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq, in the future we can discuss this. This can take very long, and it's a series by itself. Yeah. So I just wanted to point out to show that there is a lot of diversity in within Shiism also. Now, coming to our discussion, the main discussion where we're discussing the disputes and the differences within Shiism. So I just felt to mention this one example from Zaydism. So if you notice, Zaydism, for those of you who studied, if you read the likes of Najm Haidar, was written extensively on Zaydism. Or for example, Professor Madeline, you will notice that Zaydism starts from, so there's a discussion within researchers whether Zayd bin Ali was the founder of Zaydism or Zaydism started after him. Okay, that's not our discussion. I'm just pointing it out. After that, now you have sects coming in. So, for example, you have the Jarudiyya sect, okay? You have the Batriyya sect, you have the Sulaymaniya sect. Okay, these sects now, Zaydis would not identify themselves with these sects anymore. Today you have the Hadawi sect, you have the Nasiri sect, okay? These are referring to Imam Hadi and Nasir Utrush and all that. So these are a lot of sects also emerged within Zaydism also, to show this point that Zaydism also is not an exception from this rule. So there's an interesting sect within Zaydism called the Mutrafiyya sect. Mutrafiyya meaning it's referring to somebody by the name of Mutrif bin Shahab, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken with the name. This sect is interesting because there was a lot of opposition towards it, and there's not much literature found, even in the Zaydi books, about it. So, for example, there's one article which I'll quote, and then you have Professor Madeline, Wilfred Madeline, also writing a portion. There's an article in his book about sects and religion. He has a write-up on this sect. Okay. Now, as much as I studied, in my humble study, I didn't find the differences so huge between Mutrafiyya and other sects of Zaydism. But this is one sect which was considered a kafir, these were considered heretics Rather, it went to a level that their land was confiscated. They were really opposed, okay, as we will see. Now, this is a book on Tabaqat al-Zaydiyya, the different scholars of Zaydism. Notice the author says that the people of Yemen were blessed with two things. Okay, look at the blessing he's mentioning. One is through Imam al-Hadi. Imam al-Hadi is not the Shia Imam Hadi alayhi salam, is Imam Yahya bin Hussein. They follow in Zaydism, and from whom the Hadawi school comes out. And then the other one is Qadi Ja'far. Okay, Qadi Ja'far, the judge Ja'far. Look at what they did. This author says that Imam Hadi rescued Zaydism from the Batiniya, those esoteric sects, okay, the one you will call the Batiniya and the mystical sects. Qadi Ja'far, on the opposite, he fought the Mutrafiya sect. And that's how today I believe it's not there anymore. Now look at what conflicts end up doing. So the author says the Mutrafiya sect opposed him, that means Qadi Ja'far, by establishing another school near the mosque and caused him harm. These are the effects of conflicts and disputes. And this is what I'm saying we need to learn. The more we fight with each other, the more schools come up, the more sects come up, okay, and the more strands come up, okay? Now, this is not my conclusion that they don't differ with each other. This is an article. The article is mainly on zakat, but you can get a picture of the differences between Mutarafiyya and the other Zaydi sects. The article is called "Competing Visions of Community in Medieval Zaydi Yemen" by Johan Hayes and Eric Ovden. Notice, these authors also come and conclude the same. They say that the Mutrafiyya did not oppose Al-Hadi's theory on Imam. They didn't have any difference. Okay? Rather, they themselves claim to be Orthodox Zaydis following Al-Hadi. You get me? So there was no difference as much. Yes, there were minor differences, but these differences were not such that they would result in takfir and their land being confiscated and they being chucked out and all whatnot. I don't know. So what did they oppose? But they opposed contemporary individual imam pretenders, saying they did not have enough merit. Okay, this is where the actual fight was, that they really emphasized on merit. The other Zaydis emphasized on them being from Ahlul Bayt more than the fadl and the merit. Okay, this was what is happening with the Mutrafiyya. Now, in the same article, look at now what happens. In the 11th century, the Gregorian calendar, this is equivalent to 500 AH, the Islamic calendar. This is where you have two now Zaydi Imams coming up. One is Mutawakkil bin Sulaiman, and the other one is Mansur Abdullah bin Hamza. He really fought the Mutrafiyya. Okay? Now look at the differences. Now, Mutawakkil, not only did he claim to control collection and usage of zakat like Al-Hadi, so the difference between Mutrafiyya and the Hadawi school was this, that the Hadawi school claimed that zakat and all the collections need to be centralized. The Mutrafiyya didn't believe in that. They say, no, we don't accept some of the Imams and thus we will not centralize it. Minor differences, but look at where it went. Okay? So notice, the Imam Mansur Abdullah bin Hamza also demanded control over zakat. The fight is on this. Okay? But he didn't stop here. He went even further and declared them to be kafir, takfir of them. Not only that, confiscated their lands and destroyed their main hijrah by military force. Hijrah is a term being used by the Zaydis because they believe in Darul Hijra. This is a term being used for the land they stay in. Notice, military force now is being used. Whenever we can't discuss intellectually with anyone, what do? We end up using force. Okay? This is Zaydism. So the example I gave was just to give a snapshot that no sect is safe from these disputes. Okay? Now, coming to Shia Ithna Ashariya, Shia Imamiyya. Today we'll just stick to the time of the Imams, and then later, inshallah, we start from the 3rd and 4th century in the next lecture, inshallah. So, Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Malikian is one of the great scholars in Hadith and Rijal at the moment in Qom. His beautiful books also on this topic. He writes this article, and it's translated, it's there on Iqra online. Notice he says that there are two currents within two schools of thought within Shiism. This is at the time of the Imams. We're not talking today, we're talking at the time of the Imams. There were two different schools of thought. So the picture being given that at the time of the Imams, all the ashab of the Imams were following the Imams and all whatnot. Yes, they were following the Imams, but they had big time differences within themselves, and we'll see that. So Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Malikian says there were two currents and there were two schools of thought at the time of the 5th and 6th Imam alayhim as-salam. The first school of thought was the Ma'arifi, the way he calls it, or the Gnostic or the Mystic, the Irfani school, the way we know, or the Batini school as we know today. This school was interested in the Batini and esoteric and mystical issues, and not fiqh and hadith issues. Now, who belongs to this group? Jabir bin Yazid al-Ju'fi. Okay, Abu al-Khattab, Mufaddal bin Umar, Mu'alla bin Khunais. These are today known to be Ghalis now. Okay, these were the Batinis. This was one strand at the time of the 6th Imam. The second strand you have at the time of the Imam is the jurisprudential current, the way he calls it. They were interested in hadith and fiqh and all that. Okay, they were not interested in the batini matters and esoteric matters. The likes of Muhammad bin Muslim, Zurara, Safwan, Ibn Abi Umair, and Bazanti, and the list goes on. There's a huge list also here. Okay, this was the current. This was another current and school of thought. Now, there's a book by Sheikh Mahdi Farmanian and Mustafa Sadiqi Kashani. Again, the examples of books I gave, this is another book in the same category, in the same genre. Nigahi bi Tarikh Tafakkur Imamiyye, a study in the history of Imamiyya thought, where it discusses the different strands within the Shia Ithna Ashariya. Okay? So on page 25, so Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Malikian talks about two strands, two schools of thought at the time of the Imams. He adds another strand and another school of thought. He calls them the rationalists, okay? Those with giraish aqli, those who were theologians with rationalist inclination. So the likes of Hisham bin Hakam and his student and his follower, for example, Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman and them, okay? This were another strand altogether, and we'll see the differences again within them. Now, look at where the differences reach to. So this is on page 23. I'm reading from it. He says, he gives an example. Abdul Rahman bin Hajjaj, Hisham ibn Hakam ra takfir kard. Okay? So Abdul Rahman bin Hajjaj, he does takfir of Hisham bin Hakam, who we all know is a great companion of the Imam alayhi salam. Okay? They do takfir of each other. Not only that, Ja'far bin Isa, whose example we will quote as we go further from Ayatollah Khoi, he complains to the Imam that the Shias are considering me as Zindiq and Kafir. So Zindiq has different meanings. Again, a discussion for further or later time. But the main meaning which is being used by scholars is an atheist or somebody who's an agnostic, somebody who doesn't believe in any religion. Okay, so notice the companions consider each other as agnostics and atheists and do takfir of each other. Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman, the same complaint. Now, he quotes an example again uh, between Ibn Abi Umayr, okay, and Hisham bin Hakam and his followers. Again, a dispute between the two. Now, what was the dispute? Notice, he says that Ibn Abi Umayr mu'taqid bud hame dunya as ani imam ast. Ibn Abi Umayr used to believe that the whole world belongs to the imam, and this is a discussion which goes back to the discussion of zakat and khums, and partially related to wilayat takwiniya discussion also. So Ibn Ami Umayr used to believe that the whole world and the whole world belongs to the Imam, and he can do anything in it the way he wishes. Okay, but on the opposite side was Abu Malik Hadrami wa Hisham. Notice Hisham bin Hakam is considered a companion, and his other student Abu Malik Hadrami. They used to believe no, the opposite. The Imam doesn't control and doesn't everything doesn't belong to the Imam. Okay? Things belong to everybody personally, individually. Do you get me? And this is where the whole discussion of zakat and khums and how it affects the discussion of wilayat takwiniya. For those who want to come and say that wilayat takwiniya, anybody who denies it should be, is considered a deviant. Look at the differences within the ashab of the Imams. Okay, we're not discussing 14th century today. We're discussing the 2nd century. Okay, it's a worth it read. It's a small book. These were the conflicts going on. So, current school of thought number one, the mystics. School number two was the fuqaha and the muhaddithin. Yeah, this is where the likes of Zurara and all come in. Sheikh Mahdi Farmanian, who is another great scholar, he comes and adds a third group, which is the rationalists. Now, let's see what happens now. No, notice, Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Malikian says these two movements had many quarrels, such that Kashina, in his Rijal Kashi, narrates this, that Jamil ibn Darraj apparently, he says that if we wanted to know who are the companions of, of Abu al-Khattab, we used to identify the companions of Abu al-Khattab by the hatred for these people. For who? For the likes of Zurara and Muhammad ibn Muslim. That's how much hatred was there between them. Do you get me? Okay, these are the amount of conflicts we have been having since memorial. Okay, now may God's mercy be upon them, all of them. Now, many of the ahadith in condemnation of each current have been transmitted by the members of other group. It's exactly what we faced in Sunnism. You saw that the way one group, Abu Hanifa's group, condemns the other group, and the other group condemns this group also. Similarly, in Shiism also now, you have the likes of Abu al-Khattab and his followers condemning the likes of Zurara and his followers, and vice versa. Okay? So, then he goes on giving an example. He says one example is the scheming against Mufaddal bin Umar, where Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was told that he keeps the company of wrong people with him. So this is a famous incident of Mufaddal bin Umar, that he was in the company of the evil and wrong people, those who didn't used to observe Islam as the way it should be observed. This was one example. Go further, okay? From Muhammad bin Sanan, a number of people of Kufa wrote to Imam Sadiq. They said Mufaddal sits in the company of pigeon fanciers and people that drink alcohol. Okay? This is about Mufaddal bin Umar. Now, what happened? Look at Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Malikian's conclusion. It says the first current, that means the mystics and the Batinis, were accused of deviancy and ghulu. Okay, this is a fight we're still having till date. By the second one, okay, so this ghulu was, they were called, according to Muhammad Sheikh Baqir Malikian, was that this group was called Ghalis by the second group, that is the Fuqaha and the Muhaddithin. And the second group was accused of taqsir, and they were known as muqassirs. Okay, that means they're denying the fada'il of Imams alayhim salam. Now I'll come back to this. Look at this example. Allama Majlisi quotes in his Bihar. The likes of Zurar, they were accused also. Today, if we are surprised that today we are having these fights are not new. The likes of Zurara were also accused of being muqassirs. That means they didn't understand the fada'il of the Imams and the merits of the Imams. Okay, and this fight, and I'm mentioning this for this reason, these fights we are going on till date. Till date, we're having these fights today. What fada'il and what merits do Ahlul Bayt have, and what is considered as ghulu and what is considered as taqsir till date. Now, if these fights would have been sorted then, today we wouldn't have been having these fights anymore. And this is what I'm trying to say. Let's learn from history. Okay? So Allama Majlisi quotes this hadith from Basair al-Darajat, and then he puts his footnotes. So I'm interested in the footnote, okay? The hadith is this, that Zurara says, I went in the presence of the fifth Imam alayhi salam, and the Imam asks him, what do you possess of the hadith of the Shia? Notice what the hadith is in circulation. So Zurara says, I have many of them, but I've considered burning them. You get me? Okay, this is Zurara, who now is considering burning the ahadith of the Imams which were prevalent within the Shias. So then the hadith goes on that apparently Zurara doesn't accept Imams. They discuss some matters which is not mentioned in the hadith. Apparently, Zurara doesn't accept Imam's understanding, and that is why Imam has to use this now language. That don't you see that the angels also differed on the merits of Adam? Okay, that's the conclusion of the hadith. That means he wasn't convinced, and that's why Imam had to use this understanding. So notice now Allama Majlis's footnote on this hadith. Says Zurara perhaps rejected certain narrations about their virtues, the virtues of the Imams, that his intellect could not comprehend. This is the level of Zurara. Okay? And this is what I say, if those problems would have been sorted then, today we wouldn't have been having these issues. Now we're still having these issues, and we're still continuing with these conflicts. Let's sit down, discuss these issues academically in a civilized manner. Thus, Allama Majlisi goes on to say that thus he was reminded through the story of the angels and the denial of Adam's superiority. This is what it shows, that Zurara still didn't accept what the Imam said. That Imam has to use this parable and this kind of example. Now, Allama Majlisi goes on, that says that denying such matters stems from the lack of understanding. Now, this is still going on. Now, coming back to the same issue, the article of Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Malikian, notice. So these two strands They were then, they're still continuing. The likes of Zurara, who were close companions of the Imams, were accused also of being muqassir. So, Sheikh Malikian goes on to say that the term taqsir was the creation of the result of these conflicts. Can you see now labeling goes on now? This is the result of these conflicts. Before this, there was no precedence of this terminology. Now, he goes on to say that the mashhur opinion, the popular opinion today is that the jurisprudential and the fuqaha and the muhaddithin are right. Okay, the likes of Zorar, those who were considered muqassirs at that time. And this Gnostic and this mystical school of thought is deviant and is considered as ghalis. Inshallah, some other time when we discuss the issues with Irfan, we can discuss these issues. Now, it doesn't stop there. Look at what is happening now. He says the narrations that dispraise Zurara and Muhammad ibn Muslim, which are plenty. Okay, Ayatollah Khoui at least mentions 20, if I'm not mistaken. 20 such narrations which dispraise Zurara to the level that they do la'na. Imam is being attributed of cursing Zurara. Okay, are more are not only rejected and non-factual, but Muhammad ibn Musa, Muhammad bin Isa bin Ubaid has been accused of fabricating these narrations. Okay, so a Rawi from another strand, he accuses people from, and the Rawi from these strand. Okay, now he concludes by saying that it appears that all blameworthy reports of Zurara share Muhammad bin Isa in their chains, and this is an important indication of his prejudice and inclination towards Zurara. This is the amount of differences and disputes they had with each other, that they fabricated hadith against each other. And as you go further, you will realize some of these hadith have sahih chains also, they have authentic chains, which we're suffering till date today in sorting. Okay, so this is in one article. There's another article in Shiitic studies. You can see the rivalry between the companions. The example is given of Mufaddal bin Umar there also. You can refer to it. Now, it's not only Sheikh Baqir Malikian. This is Ayatollah Subhani. Okay, you see, one of the issues in Ilm al-Rijal, if you refer to Ilm al-Rijal, one of the biggest challenges Ilm al-Rijal has is this. Now, I'm not discrediting this science, but I'm saying it has challenges of its own. One of the challenges is this, that when the scholars want to uh, weaken or praise a narrator, one of the criteria they use is madhab and sect and religion. Again, this is a whole discussion by itself. So now Ayatollah Subhani says that this is a very problematic criteria of discrediting scholars. Why? One, he gives two reasons. Look at the two reasons he gives. One is because there has been a lot of disagreement on many theological issues. This is what we have been saying all this time, that even on theological issues, our scholars have differed. There's no so-called mainstream Shiism. Okay, there's no uniform Shiism. There have been disagreement on a lot of theological issues. Now he gives an example. He says on the notion of Prophet's sallallahu alaihi wasallam's forgetfulness or the attribution of tafweed. Okay, this is not our discussion. You look at these main theological discussions, there were disputes in history about them. Okay? So it becomes very hard now to identify that this Rawi, this narrator now, should we weaken him because he has such thoughts, or should we consider him trustworthy? Okay, this is an issue. And the other problem is what our discussion is. He says it is highly problematic, especially when considering such certain actions taken by some narrators against others. Like what? These include exclusion from the city. And this is where the madrasa and the school of Qum is famous for. That anybody they disagreed with, they felt he's a ghali, they chucked him out of the city. Okay, we'll mention some examples as we go on. So these were the disputes going on. Now, you come and authenticate or weaken a narrator based on this, it's going to be very problematic. Okay, according to Ayatollah Subhani. This shows the amount of disputes going on even at that time. Now, this is the example I was talking about, Ayatollah Khui's example. Ayatollah Khui quotes this example. This is a hadith. They say that this Rawi came in the presence, this Rawi with a group of people came in the presence of the 8th Imam alayhi salam. One of the narrators says that I complained to Allah and to you about what we are experiencing from our companions. Notice, min ashabina. The Shias are talking things about us and doing things about us, not from outsiders, from the Shias itself. So Imam turns back and tells him that, what are you experiencing? So this is now Ja'far, the example we gave. Even Sheikh Mahdi Farmanian gave this example. Ja'far says that by Allah, they accuse us, Wallah, Wallahi, yuzandiquna, the same word of zindiq, yukaffiruna, they do takfir, وَيَبْرَؤُونَ minna, they're disassociating themselves from us. They don't want to be in our presence. Okay, and this is what we see even today, that anybody we differ with, we want to stay away from. Rather than coming together, sorting the problems, we stay away from that. These were the problems being complained to Imam Rida alayhi salam. So this is an interesting statement. Now I'm quoting this because Ayatollah Khui believes this hadith is authentic, and he even considers this hadith to be proving the integrity of this Ja'far, the narrator, Ja'far bin Isa, if I'm not mistaken. Imam tells Ja'far, don't worry, this is not something new. This is how the companions of the 4th Imam, the 5th Imam, the 6th Imam, and 7th Imam alayhimus salam were. Ya Allah. Yani all of them, from the time of the 4th Imam till the time of the 8th Imam, these disputes are never ending. They're just going on. Okay, so then Imam goes on saying this, that he says that the companions of Zurara, a very close companion of Imam, would declare others as disbelievers, and that is what we saw here in Sheikh Malikian's article. And likewise, the others would declare the Zurara and their like as disbelievers also. Do you get me? Okay? Now, somebody says this is a da'if hadith and all. Look at Ayatollah Khui. He says, Aqul, I'm saying this, sanadu riwaya sahihun. He authenticates this narration. That means he is approving of the disputes which were going on at that time. Rather, he says that this narration is a proof for the integrity of Ja'far, one of the narrators in the hadith. Okay, to the level of what? Calling each other zindiq, to do takfir of each other. No, they disassociated from each other. Now, look at it how it goes further then. Wallahi, this is in Sheikh Tusi's Ikhtiyar Ma'rifatul Rijal. The Rawi says, I was in the presence of 8th Imam alayhi salam, and a letter reached the presence of Imam alayhi salam. So Imam opened the letter and started reading it. Look at the statement, Ya Allah. We attribute such things are being attributed now. It doesn't stop with all. It says, هذا كتاب ابن زان لزانية. Ya Allah. You know, this is a letter from a son of an adulteress. Okay, you don't want to go further. Okay, Then he goes on to say, هذا كتاب زنديق. The same words again. This is a letter of an atheist. Imam is talking about, God forbid, is talking about Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman like this. So Sheikh Tusi then quotes another statement from Abu Amr. He says, فَلْيَنْظُرِ النَّاظِرُ. If a person looks at this and just thinks about it, فَيَتَعَجَّبْ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْأَخْبَارِ. A person is surprised and amazed with such kind of narrations. رَوَاهَا الْقُمِّيُّونَ فِي يُونُس. You see this? That means the Qummis, who are very famous of chucking out people from the city, they are the ones who were famous for narrating such hadith about Yunus and dispraise of Yunus. Okay? Sheikh Tusi also mentions it in his Rijal also. طَعَنَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُمِّيُّونَ. The Qummis used to dispraise Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman, while he's considered one of the giants today. Okay? Rather, the Imams also considered him one of the giants. Now, where did this start from? Again, difference of methodology, and this is what we've been discussing also, that we clarify our methodology before we do a discussion. Notice, this is an article by Muhammad Kazim Rahmati. He says that برخی از گروه‌های شیعه تمایلی به این دانش نداشته‌اند. So he's talking about theology, and you will see as we go further in next week's lecture, you will see till date scholars are not very happy with this whole field of theology. Okay, they say that they were not very happy with theology and kalam. و به این حد نیز بسنده نمی‌کرده. Okay, they didn't limit themselves to this, rather احادیثی در مذمت دانش کلام و متکلمین شیعه جعل می‌کرده اند. They didn't stop with that, okay, not saying that we don't like theology, rather they made a fabricated hadith, which you will see as we go further. Shaytani considers them authentic also. This scholar says that they fabricated hadith in opposition of theology and all the theologians. And thus Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman and Hisham bin Hakam, because they used to belong to this strand of theologians and rationalists, the Qummis who were muhaddithin, okay, they were the scripturalists, they didn't like this, and thus they made up a hadith against the strand. Do you get me? Okay. Now, this is my final example, and we continue. I'm sorry again, time. So, Ibn Ghadairi, who is one of the strictest rijalists you will find, you come to him, you will find out that he also blames the Qummis now. This is where the disputes had reached. Now we call each other Ghali now, okay? So notice, this Rawi Ahmad bin Sa'id bin Mihran, وقال, he says, Ibn Ghadairi says, وقال القميون كان غاليا. He was a Ghali. But then Ibn Ghadairi says, وحديثه فيما رأيته سالم. Okay? I studied his riwayats and I didn't find any trace of ghulu in them, any exaggeration in them. Do you see this? Okay, the Qummis were very quick in considering people as ghalis. Another example, الصفار القمي زعم القميون أنه كان غاليا. Okay, the Qummis again considered him as a ghali, but وَرَأَيْتُ لَهُ كِتَابًا فِي الصَّلَاةِ سَدِيدًا. When I looked at his book of Salah, it was a strong, solid book. And this is one of the criteria of judging, and this was a criteria then also, that if you want to see somebody is a ghali or not, look at them how much they observe Sharia or not. So now he says that when I look at this Rawi, and I look at his book of Salah, and I look how solid it is, how can I accuse him of ghuluna? And he goes on and giving other examples. There are plenty of examples which can be given. Okay? Now, in conclusion, what we discussed was today only at the time of the Imam and the amount of disputes. Okay? And these disputes are continuing till date. What I'm trying to say is this, that let's wake up, my Shia brothers and sisters. It's time now to end these conflicts. And this has been the message which I'm sharing from day one. That let's sit down. These conflicts will go on forever if we go on like this. It's time now we sit together, okay, and we sort these conflicts. We can sort them, alhamdulillah. If we can't sort them, we agree to disagree, okay. And the month of Ramadan is coming. We pray to Allah that Allah should help us unite our hearts in this month. And inshallah, Allah should give us the tawfiq to be able to become His guests in this holy month. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.